if I have time, I'm going to say the first few verses of another Yeats poem that I think is relevant to midwifery. So you've actually stolen my thunder, because I was going to ask how many of you in this room were born. And of course, you have all been looked after by a midwife. There are a few parts of the world where women don't have midwives, but generally everybody in the world has been looked after by a midwife. And midwives make a tremendous contribution to society. We can do great good and we can do great harm. And midwives have a saying that we're changing the world one birth at a time. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about some new ideas of midwifery, but also some of the old ideas about midwifery. I imagine that many of you know the program Call the Midwife. This was one of the most popular programs on television, primetime television. Everyone stopped to watch it, even when it competed with Downton Abbey. And I have just been in Australia, and when I checked out of my hotel, the receptionist asked me what I was, and I said I was the president of the Royal College of Midwives. And we started chatting. He said to me, "Do you know that program Call the Midwife?" So I said, "Yes, of course. All midwives watch it. We all stop on a Sunday night to watch it." And I have met the cast of Call the Midwife. So with that, he asked me for my autograph. And my autograph wasn't because I was president of the Royal College of Midwives, but because I'd met the cast of Call the Midwife, and he was going to take my autograph home to show his wife. But there's a serious message to this. So these are first-year student midwives from King's College London, and they're dressed up in Call the Midwife uniforms. And they had a bike ride around Westminster, through Hyde Park, past the Serpentine, to raise attention to the fact that we need 5,000 more midwives in England. And we stopped on our bikes outside of Westminster, and we served passers-by cake, and we had MPs visit us to raise attention, really, to the important work that midwives do, and the fact that the birth rate has gone up and we need more midwives. But there's a serious message related to Call the Midwife. Why do we love it so much? Why is there so much resonance to this program? And I think it shows humanity at its best. These were midwives who worked in the 1950s in the East End of London, in a really poor part of the world. And what I see as I watch Call the Midwife are midwives who are in and of the community, who have great respect for the women that they look after. And those women have the most unimaginably difficult lives. But the midwives actually understand the kind of life that they live and their needs. And that helps them be a really good midwife. Thank you. So, the world of midwifery here at Chipping Norton. How many of you were born in Chipping Norton? And how many of you gave birth in Chipping Norton? Well, Chipping Norton is state of the art. I was director of midwifery for Oxfordshire from 1986 to 1991. And when I decided to give up management and my main academic role, I came to work in Chipping Norton. And I worked here for a number of years. And I have to tell you that this is really state of the art. And what we know now from the science about the effectiveness of midwifery is that this is the safest care that you can provide. Care outside of the hospital, in a birth centre where women can choose to give birth at home, where they have midwives that they can get to know and trust. And what we know from the research is that for women who are healthy, who are having a baby, that actually this is very safe for the baby, but it's much safer for the woman herself, because she's more likely to avoid medical interventions that she doesn't need. And that, of course, gives the woman a great start in her mothering life. And by the way, can I just say this is Frances Barnsley, who was manager here for many, many years, who would attend home births no matter what the weather was. Whether it was snowing or raining, she would always get to the home birth of a woman who wanted her. Thank you. Well, I wanted to call this talk Midwifery in the Start of New Life. And we're becoming aware that the way we look after women when they have their babies will have a huge impact on the way that they feel about, particularly for the woman, the way she feels about being a mother. And what I like to remind midwives is that actually the birth of the baby is the birth of the mother. So it's really important that we look after the woman and the baby so that they're healthy, so that care is safe, that we assess the health of the mother and the baby, we assess how the baby's growing. But we do much more than that, because this is a time in which the woman becomes a mother, and she has to adapt to a new role in life. For the father too, it's really important that the father is included in that process. But for the woman herself, the changes are really profound. The physical changes are phenomenal. And it's a psychological change and an emotional change. So when we think as a midwife about looking after the woman and the baby, not only are we thinking about how healthy is this mother, how healthy is the baby, but also how are they doing in terms of their hopes about the birth of their baby? Are they anxious? Are they frightened? Do they have life circumstances that will actually put them off to a bad start? People who are very poor, women who are very poor, who are from different ethnic groups, generally have more difficulty, and their babies aren't as healthy as the babies of more affluent people living in a place like Chipping Norton, where there are good maternity services. When you look at this picture, what do you see? What do you think Jessamy is feeling? She's just given birth to her baby. Huge emotion. What would Jessamy do if somebody tried to take her baby away from her? She'd fight. So I don't have much time to go into some of the science that underlies what we do in midwifery, but I wanted to talk about oxytocin, the hormone. Are any of you learning about this in psychology or in biology? So all of us have within us a hormone called oxytocin, and it's known as the hormone of love. And this morning, we're probably experiencing surges of oxytocin because we're in congenial surroundings, we're with like-minded people, we're going to have good food, we're being kind of stimulated by new ideas. And all of us have oxytocin, men, women. If we have a massage, there's a surge in the amount of oxytocin. When you have physical contact with those that you love, there's a production of oxytocin. This is what's called a hormone. It's a neurohormone, and it's a hormone that actually affects the brain. During pregnancy, labor and birth, and the early days of life, there are very, very high rates of oxytocin in the woman. And they actually help her fall in love, form a bond, form an attachment to her baby. Because what they do is they help the woman feel more relaxed, but also more socially open to human connection. And we know, for example, that when the baby is born, the natural place for the baby to be placed once a woman has given birth is to hold the baby here. And the woman will often look in the eyes of the baby. And so this bond, this attachment that's formed, that started during pregnancy, but also critically during this critical period, during pregnancy, labor and birth, and immediately after birth, is absolutely crucial to the long life of that baby. And all of the parents here in this room will know that we care about our children, no matter how old they are. This bond, this attachment between us, actually helps us make the commitment to the child until the child is ready to leave home, to become grown up, and to kind of go off on their own. But any of the parents here who have older children, as I do, my children are from 42 to 24, know that you never stop caring about them. Thank you. So what do midwives do, and how do they help the mother and baby and the father and the family get off to the best start? Well, we meet women early in pregnancy, and we like to meet the partner and the family. And we usually talk about how they want their baby to be born and where they want their baby to be born. And we check their health, and we assess the health of the baby as pregnancy goes on. And during labor and birth, we're with the woman. So when a woman goes into labor, the midwife is doing a number of things. She's assessing how healthy the baby is, how healthy the mother is. But importantly, what she's doing is helping allay any fears that the woman has, because being in labor and having a baby is a very dramatic thing to do. You're changing your role in life, you're taking on a big responsibility. But for many women, it's very painful. And so, for example, a midwife can do really, really simple things. So when the woman goes into labor, often I'll offer a back rub. And we talk very gently to women, asking them how they're feeling, how is their baby doing, has their baby been moving, listening to the baby's heart, and just assessing how the labor is going. But it's not what we do, it's the way that we do it. And we now know that this human support is absolutely crucial to a healthy outcome. So, for example, if women have one-to-one care in labor, if they have a midwife who stays with them all the time during labor, we know that the woman is far less likely to need pain relief, far less likely to need a delivery that's assisted by forceps, far less likely to need a cesarean section, more likely to be satisfied with the kind of care that they've received, will feel more positive about the birth. And one of the most important things we do as midwives or as doctors looking after women is that we attend to the physical health and safety, but we ensure that the woman has a good experience. So what do we need to know as midwives? Well, fundamental to being a midwife is the relationship that we form with women and with the family. Midwife in English means with the woman. That means somebody who is on the same level as a woman. We're not superior in any way. And you remember in Call a Midwife, I talked about the midwife being part of the community, in and of the community, understanding the kind of lives that women lead, being like a friend, really, understanding what the woman is going through, reassuring, making sure that we know what her hopes and dreams are. And fundamentally, we need to make sure that the care the woman is receiving is the care that she wants. In the United Kingdom, we have policy which we call woman-centered. The government policy is far ahead of much of the world. Women here are entitled to choose where they give birth to their babies, where they have care, and the kind of care that they want. Can I just stay on that for a minute? But there are a number of things that we need to know. We need to have a scientific basis to our understanding, so we need to know about biology, we need to know a little bit about chemistry, we need to know about psychology. And recently there's a whole field of new science that's emerging over the last 5 years. There's research about the microbiome, there's research about epigenetics, there's research about oxytocin and the physiological basis of the mother-baby bond and the attachment between the mother and baby. But importantly, we have to understand that in some populations of women and in some parts of the world, that in fact care it's quite difficult to give, and those babies have lower chances. We need to understand that women have a right to choose where they give birth and to refuse treatment. This is me with some student midwives. Very difficult to get into midwifery education nowadays. And so the message that I want to give is that midwives provide care without doctors, but we need to refer to doctors if there are any problems. And can I just go quickly to... I became the first professor of midwifery in the United Kingdom. I went to school in a school where nobody ever went to university. Nobody in my family ever went to university, and I became professor in the early 1990s. And it's been wonderful because I've always maintained hands-on practice, but done research. And my research is around one-to-one care. And one-to-one care is the kind of care in which the woman meets her midwife early in her pregnancy and has that woman look after her during labor and birth and after birth, so they can form a relationship of trust and knowing each other. And the research indicates that this is very safe, that it reduces interventions for women. It gives a very, very positive experience, and midwives like to work in this way. And I just want to go to one more slide right at the end. You can go on further. And I've done a lot of traveling. I've been to about 18 different countries, some of them repeatedly, and go to the very last slide, please. And this is me as president of the Royal College of Midwives, meeting Princess Anne, our patron, the Princess Royal in the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh, when I first became president. And this is where I learned to be a midwife in 1965. And Princess Anne actually visits midwife-led units and talks to women and babies and to midwives about the work that they do. She makes about 2 visits a year. And on ceremonial occasions, I wear that chain, which is full of beautiful symbolism of fertility, the pomegranate, and the hands and the work of night and day. Thank you very much indeed.